Alright, gentlemen, we're going to cut to the left.
Watch the step going out of the curve.
It might be a little slick, so also look out for that.
As we bring it to the head here, we're going to slide it up to me and Zach here.
Make sure you keep the back level at all times when you're lowering.
And with your knees out back.
I'm going to start lowering it and start passing it forward.
Just passing the person from next to you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, gentlemen. You step back to your stand.
Step back to the camera, gather any percent. Either way, don't matter.
Watch your step there. Come on and have a seat.
Buddy.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good.
Folks, anyone who likes is welcome to come under the tent, there's space, gather wherever it's in the hall. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin. Various and sundry logistics complicated by the weather today. But thanks everyone for coming out here, not only to remember Jack and honor his life, but to support his family and their loss. We'll begin the service this morning before Jack will be texting. It's 90th Psalm. It's traditional in times of sadness to turn to the psalmist for words of comfort and solace. Again, this is the 90th Psalm. Tefillah Moshe Isha Elohim, prayer of Moses, man of God. Adonai ma'on ata ha'ita lanu b'dor b'dor, b'terem harim yuladu v'atchol el eretz v'tevel u'mei olam ad olam atamel. O Lord, you have been our refuge, from generation to generation. Before the mountains were born, before even the earth was fashioned, from eternity to eternity, everlastingly, you are God. With human beings you crumble to dust, and you say, return, O mortals. 1,000 years are in your sight as a passing day or an hour of night. The day comes, you sweep us away, and we sleep. Like grass we flourish for a day. In the morning we sprout afresh, by nightfall we fade and wither. 70 our years may number, 80 years if granted the vision. Laden with trouble and travail, life quickly passes and flies away. Who can know the power of your anger, or measure the reverence due you? We only ask that you teach us to use all of our days, that we may in life attain a heart of wisdom. Match our days of sadness with days of joy, equal to the years we have struggled. Then your servants will see your power. Their children will know your glory. The favor of the Lord our God be upon us. God will establish the work of our hands. The work of our hands God will surely establish. Vayehi Noam Adonai Eloheinu Aleinu, Ma'aseh Yadeinu Konana Aleinu, Ma'aseh Yadeinu Konanei. Eloheinu Velohei Avoteinu, our God, God of our ancestors, Shepherd of Israel, guide us today with love and guide us every day with compassion. If when faced with grief and loss we grow distant from you, do not abandon us, but instead draw us closer to you and to your presence. We ask that you grant solace and comfort to all those we know who mourn. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside those still waters, in the green pastures, you, God, become our shepherd. Be our strength today, and also be our shield and our guide. God be our comfort today and throughout all our days. And let's together say to that, Amen. The sages of our tradition, the Talmudic sages, long ago noted that there are some people who are blessed with the gift of a long life, many years, and that there are others who are blessed with the life quality, in other words, substance to the years that they have, but few people have both. But you know, we're here today thinking about Jack, his life, remembering him, honoring his memory, celebrating his life. And his life was long, he was 92 years old, but it was also very sweet. It was filled with the things that we all hope to find in the course of our years. How do you live fully, embrace every day, focus on family and friends, give back to community, always did that, always be there for the people that you love. Jack checked every single one of those boxes. He was born in 1928, son of Frank and Bertha Pernatin. Grew up in the Philly area. Grew up with his sister Cookie. Cookie not here today, but is either watching or will be able to watch the service later. He went to Overbrook High School and then went to college in Delaware Valley. Delaware Valley, he majored in horticulture, I think, and that was a kind of indication of an interest that would stay with Jack throughout his life, a lifelong love affair with gardening and nature. From that time, growing up, as he was young, parents' home, community that he grew up in, he learned about values that really stayed with him and I think guided him throughout his life. Certainly the importance of family was one of those values. Also ideals that he lived by, like honesty and loyalty, commitment, responsibility, work ethic as well. And if anyone who knew Jack, powerful work ethic he spoke about. When he was in his early 20s, he met a young woman named Marilyn Friedman, and according to family lore, it was at one of those singles retreats in the Poconos, so popular in the Jewish community in the 50s and 60s. Marilyn was a DC girl, so she was from this area. He was a Philly boy. How do you work that out? I guess they had a long-distance relationship for a short time, going back and forth. But before too long, they decided to get married, and they became husband and wife. The year was 1952. They settled in the DC area, closer to Marilyn's family. And the home they created together, very traditional in feel. In a lot of ways, very like 1950s kind of sensibility. Jack was the breadwinner. He worked hard to provide for the family. Marilyn, in many ways, filled that role of homemaker and caregiver. She took care of Alan and Elaine. You know, dinner was on the table every night, that kind of thing. Although she also worked in the business, I believe, that they built together. So that was a project that the two of them put so much time and effort into. They loved one another, devoted to one another, always there for each other, and all told, they would share, I believe, 46 years of their lives as husband and wife before Marilyn passed away. She passed away in 98, 698 when she's gone. Elaine and Alan have warm memories of the home they grew up in, and also the old neighborhood. We talked about your parents' friends and that sense of closeness and connection that everyone shared. Also the long summers that you were able to spend in Ocean City, something that you both loved, and your dad would come down for the weekends down and talk about how you would wait for him and the excitement that you would feel when you knew it was almost time for him to arrive. You know, you think about that time and how people were connected, what a neighborhood was, what those moments meant. It was a very different time. It was a golden time in many ways. In terms of his professional life, Jack created, with Marilyn, and ran that business, Crown Education. It was one of the early school supply businesses. Jack really did well with it. He was very organized in everything that he did. He spoke about that. He was bright. He did have that powerful work ethic, which you absolutely have to get a business up and running and run it. He often worked 6 days a week, often long hours. And he knew at the end of the day, I think the key to it, honestly, is his understanding that what's a business really about. It's relationships that you form with other people, and how you connect with them and other companies. He was trustworthy. He was honest, he was naturally respected by people, he was kind-hearted, and people responded, that kind of person who just did. And he was a man who always needed to stay busy. He spoke about that as well. He really seems to me never sat still, even after he retired and moved to Florida. In fact, sometimes I think he was almost busier when he was in Florida than he was up here during his working life. That passion that he had for gardening never left him. He was always interested in that. In Florida, he completed the coursework to become a master gardener. I didn't even know such a thing existed. He loved it, and he did it. And he did so well in the exam that there was actually an article about it in the newspaper. He put that knowledge to good use. So think what he did. He manned the Palm Beach County plant hotline. Can you imagine they have a plant hotline in Palm Beach County? He was the contact for people in his community who needed to replace trees. Very, very involved in the Deerfield Beach Arboretum. He worked as a tour guide for them, helped them line up speakers for their speaker series, worked and made sure their mailing list was up to date. And he remained incredibly active and involved, even as he got well into his 80s. He always looked young. That was something that he was proud of. Full head of hair that he had. And he acted young as well. He lived with vitality and he lived with energy that the truth is a lot of people half his age don't have. It was always important to Jack to have a companion in his life. We talked about that as well. And after Marilyn passed away, a couple of years later he remarried and shared more than 10 years with Gloria. And they supported each other and took care of each other. And even late into his life, well into his 80s, he always had an eye out for the ladies. I don't know, talk about that as well. You know, in a lot of ways, he was an old school guy. He was the patriarch of your family. Family always remained at the center of his life. And he was blessed to watch family grow up around him over the years. Into his life. And then blessed with that next generation of grandchildren, to see them grow up, and also to see them welcome spouses into their lives. Jared and Lindsay, and Brianna, and Joseph and Brennan, and Marissa, and Dana and David, and Ross and Marilyn. Jack was a proud and loving granddad. You knew he was your #1 fan. He was always in your corner. And it was so important to him to try to be there at all the important moments. We talked about that as well. If he could be there, he was going to be there, sharing any kind of scene. And I think it was just a couple months ago that he was able to get to the wedding. But, you know, even as he was old school, he was interesting in that he had a modern sensibility in many ways. He had a pragmatic wisdom, sense of calm. He was a great listener. You could talk to him about anything, and whatever it was, after the conversation, he just felt better. He felt that things were going to work out okay. He kept track of everyone's birthday in an organized way that he had. Every important date in the family. He was an early computer user, which is very unusual when you think about it for a guy of his generation. He liked culture, museums, music, loved to travel. And you know, more than anything else, he was what I would call in Yiddish a good Nishon. Just a good-hearted, kind, generous soul. He was loved and respected by everyone in the world. He was a devoted family man. He was a man of quality of character. And his whole life he carried what we would call in Hebrew a shem tov, a good man. He bore up well. We come together today, bringing him to his final resting place in this life. Really, I hope we can thank God for this.
It's
I got
Jack.
it. I got it.
Making his presence run in my head.
So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to some speakers from the family. And I know Alan and Elaine are going to speak. So whichever you would like to go first, please at this time.
What's up? You want my phone?
You can just turn around.
If you don't know me, I'm Elaine, Jack's daughter. So often when a loved one dies, we remember them as perfect, regardless of how they lived their life. I too believe my dad was perfect because of how he lived his life. He believed family first. He always took care of his wives, children, grandchildren. He was generous with his time, spending many hours volunteering. He was hardworking. He was a great writer. All of us would get the anniversary card or birthday card. There was always a personal message in it that was meant specifically for that person. When I was going through his office the other day, he had the lineup of all the cards for all of us, the family. Sure, including you guys. Again, he'd mentioned he was a master gardener. He always came. We lived in Southern California, and he always came to California bar and bat mitzvah, their high school, college, and law school graduations. He always ended every conversation with me saying, "I love you," which I have carried on with my family. He was my role model. My dad was the go-to person for advice. He would listen when you went to him, and his response was never, "Well, what I think you should do," but rather he would offer advice that would make you think, help you make a decision. And a few examples that I wrote down is when I got to the age of going out to the bars, he wanted me to understand that everybody has a limit to how much alcohol one person can consume. So he said to me that I will know when I come home after a night out and rush to the bathroom to throw up, that would be my limit, and to remember it. Before I went away to college, as I was packing, he let me know these next 4 years were going to be the best 4 years of my life. Didn't necessarily say study hard, he said enjoy them. When it was time to send, for me to send my first child, Jared, to school, and you always, for the first kid, you don't know anything, you want to make life perfect, I was torn between sending Jared to public school or private school. Even though the school district I lived in was one of the highest rated in California, I was torn. So I called him for advice. He said to me that it was my decision, but to remember that Jared's education was 51% my responsibility and 49% the school's. So never told me what to do, but gave me something to think about. My dad was always young for his age in looks and in his thinking. Many times when I was a kid and we were out, people would ask if we were brother and sister. He couldn't wait to get home to tell my mom after each one of those occurrences. He was the first person that I knew of my contemporaries or my parents to purchase a computer and learn how to use it. He actually learned before I did. He was FaceTiming to the end. He bought all of his grandchildren their first computers. Even at 92 and in, even at 92, this goes back to how he was thinking young. When he was in rehab most recently, he would ask the nurses about eligible women for him who were also staying in the rehab. He was a ladies' man to the end. I want to share a story that's coming full circle today. Several years ago when I was talking to him about memories of his childhood, he told me about a picture that hung over my grandparents' bed that he never forgot about. I could tell that picture held a special place in his heart. I knew what that picture he was talking about because I too remembered it. I knew where the picture was, he didn't. My cousin Ellen, his niece, had it hanging in her house. I called her up and retold the conversation with my dad. I asked her to send it to him and promised in the very, very distant future I would return it. She immediately sent it. When he opened the box, he called me crying, and he was not a crier. Sadly, today is the day, Ellen, that I'm keeping that promise. My greatest recent memory is my daughter, Brianna's wedding to Brennan. They were supposed to get, Brianna's wedding, she was supposed to get married this past March in Laguna Beach, California. But COVID moved it to Key Largo, Florida. And it ended up being the best move because my dad came for all 3 days of the celebration. When I asked if he would walk down the aisle, he said yes, but he did not want to go down with the walker. He needed somebody's arm to take him down. So, being as I am, there's never such thing as too much. I got him 2 arms. I got him my son Jared and his wife Lindsay to walk him down the aisle to the front row where he watched Brianna and Brennan get married. What a beautiful memory that is for all of us to treasure. I have lots of pictures. It was very recent and he was with all of us truly. I am so lucky to have such wonderful memories, and I hope and pray that that would be my comfort in this time.
How do I summarize all of the conversations? How do I summarize all of our conversations and organize the history lessons within we had together? How do I tell all of the jokes or funny situations we laughed at together, often about one another, often about nothing? Those might have been our best. How do I explain the feelings I had, knowing my dad always had my back? And how can I explain the many things I did for my dad unconsciously as he got older to let him know I had his back? Maryland or Florida, his preferred area. I never wanted my dad to feel he was alone or without family when he was 1,100 miles from me. I didn't want him to feel alone when he was in between girlfriends. I loved flying to Florida with the simple agenda of just hanging with my dad. When I received my COVID vaccine, I was nervous to travel, but I knew my dad needed, as soon as possible, a large dose of family, and I needed to laugh, talk, and be with my dad face to face. A few moments I'd like to share. Just about every Sunday afternoon when I was a child, my dad and I would go for car rides. He would let me direct him, go right, go left. I was always heading into D.C. I was always heading into D.C., my favorite place to try and get him lost. After about an hour or so, my dad would look at his watch and say, "We need to get home for dinner." He always got us back in 10 minutes. Obviously, I didn't get him lost, and we didn't go very far. I guess I had too many consecutive lefts or rights. Several years ago, my dad and I traveled overnight to New York for a convention. Prior to the trip, I told my dad Brighton Beach Memoirs with Matthew Broderick was on Broadway. How about I get tickets? My dad said not to. What if we're delayed traveling? He suggested I go with friends another time. We traveled up to New York, and after we checked into the hotel, my dad said, "What would you like for dinner?" I replied, "Maybe a hot dog. We have a show to catch in 45 minutes. My dad looked at me and said, "What would you have done if we were delayed traveling?" I replied, "Not tell you I bought tickets." I love my dad very much.
And I think April has some thoughts to share.
Yeah, mine's my son. Dear Jack, not only were you my father-in-law, but I consider you the second dad. You were kind, loving, and generous. I loved our one-on-one talks in Florida. It's funny that last time we had one of our talks this past March, we discussed the spirit world. Me, a firm believer. You, not so sure. But I did try to convince you that there's more than this physical world. I bet you are smiling down on me right now saying, "Yes, you were right, April." I miss you already. Make sure to send me signs from above. I love you.
Love is eternity.
And I think there are a couple of other people.
Jared and
Jared.
Then you can
So I lived in California and Grandpa lived back east, so my memories seem a little more sporadic, unfortunately. But education-wise, he was there, and I do remember that computer that Mom talked about. I remember doing the MS-DOS program, and having to type in the code to load the programs. And I remember when I was studying for law school for the LSAT, there was a sheet of paper, and now when Mom says that she was 51%, I'm trying to figure out if he actually put it there or if Mom put it there. But do you remember there were like 3 quotes on it, and I was trying to remember what the other 2 were. But I remember one was knowledge is power. And that thing sat there for like 4 years, all the way through studying through the bar, and then most recently, when he was in town, I remember playing this board game we play, which it took me about a month to learn. And Bree and Brennan still call me after learning it maybe 6 months ago. This game, Settlers of Catan. Well, Grandpa picked it up the first round, and he almost won that game. So he was one of the smartest guys I know. There's no doubt about it. Anyway, and then I got a speech, and I haven't read it yet. Alan gave it to me from.
This speech is from one of my dad's oldest friends, Marvin Burstein. Marvin is 96, and Marvin and his wife are both so loving and dear. And my dad always referred to Marvin as his best old friend, because he was. And he wrote this, emailed it, and asked to have somebody read it to them.
So this is from Marvin. Yeah. Jack was my oldest friend and surrogate brother. Every time I spoke to him, the subject always involved a joke. We exchanged many jokes over the years together. It was always a fun time when we had our conversations. Over the years, we did much together. We traveled with our wives, played cards weekly, had dinners together not only in Maryland but in Florida during the winter months. Our memories go back many years. I love Jack, and my wife, Jane, also had a passion for him. I'm not going to say this right. You know,
Jack was
good in the Shema?
Yeah.
Well, Mom didn't send me to that private Jewish school, guys. So that means good soul, and he will always be in our hearts. We send our love to Alan and Elaine and the families. May Jack's memory always be for a blessing. Love, Marvin and Jane. So, I don't know if I met him.
Is there anybody else?
Just to pick up a little bit, echo on what you said, and what happens after this, I have no idea. But I have a sense that in some way we go somewhere, and however that works, my sense would be that Jack and Marilyn are together now. What they're doing is a lot of catching up, but also looking down on this beautiful family. They help put them into the world. So maybe there's some comfort in that as well. We're going to lower Jack's casket into the earth. Anyone who would like will have an opportunity to take some place in Jack's casket once the casket goes down. The sense of that moment is that, as Jack did for all of you, and you just heard it so beautifully, over so many years, that this is not the very last thing you can do for him in this week, which is to bring you the dignity and peace to his final resting place. Say traditionally, Al Makomo Yavo Shalom. Ask God that Jack should go unto God this day, only go in peace. Hatzor Tamim Pavolo, Behold the Rachav Mishpat, El Emunah V'Ein Abel, Tzadik V'Yashar. Hatzor Tamim Bechol Kawal, Mio Marlo Matikal, Shali Pamata Uva Mahal, Meimit Unechayem Orisha Yah. Tzadik b'chol derachav hatzor tamid. Erech hapayim u'malei rachamim. Chamalna v'chusna ala botu banim. Ki lecha Adon v'slichot v'harachim. Adonai Natan, God has given. Adonai Lakach, God has taken away. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. V'hu rachum yichaper von v'lo yashki. V'irva lashiv v'ko v'lo yahir. Kol chamato. And also traditionally, we say Vayasho va'afar al ha'aretz k'shahayah v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher natan. That the dust returns to the earth as it was, our physical selves, but that the ruach, the neshama, the spirit, goes back to God who gave it. And may God be a source of comfort to all those we know who mourn. May you always grant strength to those we know who bear burdens of sorrow in the course of life. Together saying Amen.
Amen.
If anyone would like to place some hearts on Jack's casket, please. It may be most appropriate to begin with Alan and Elaine.
Here. Right here.
It is very slippery.
All right, Jack, it's that topsoil.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I said probably.
No, what you mean is doing something I'm not sure. I don't know what that means. You see that? Turn the shovel over. What does that mean? When you turn the shovel over the other way, what is that?
Because we're not supposed to enjoy the glass. If we're doing a mix-up, then we're supposed to do it two-step.
It is a tradition. I never knew that.
So that's the first shovel. So first the memorial prayer, the memorial prayer, the El Malay Rachamim, and then we'll say the words of the mourner's Kaddish. This is the memorial prayer. El Malay Rachamim, Shofei Malay Amisei Menucha Nechona, Tachach Malot Kedoshim Utaharim, Zohar Harakia Naziri, Et Ishmael, Et Yaakov, Ben Ephraim, Shehalach Yolamo, Gan Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana Ba'ala Rachamim Asirei Neseker, Kenafecha Leolamim, Ushvor B'Torah Chaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'Yanuach V'Shalom Al Mishkavo, V'Nomar Amen. El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence, among the holy, among the pure, for the soul of Jack Pernatin, who has gone to wisdom. Merciful God, we ask that our love find perfect peace in your eternal grace, that his soul should be bound up in the bonds of our lives, and that you, God, be his portion, may always, may forever, may truly rest in peace. Say together, Amen. Now in take the words of the mourner's Kaddish. And Cookie, if you can hear us, we'll be saying mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal,
Yigadash,
Yitgadash,
Ne Rabba.
Rabba.
Yaman, Nimrat, Ute, Yanit, Malkute. Vayakon, 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 Kobe Israel. Halal Islam, Kavizmu, Amen. Yeshme, Ram, Barak, Barak, Amen. Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Yitbahar, Yitzoman, Yitzaseh. Yitzadar, Yitzaleh, Yitzalah, Shemei, Yitzalah, Yitzalah. Laila, Mikol, Birkata, Shirata, Krishkata, Nakamata, Amiran, Ramam, Imru, Amen. Ya'ei, Shemana, Rabba, Mishmaya, Eleni, Ya'akol, Israel, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Tuya, Oseh Shalom, Aleinu, Ba'al Kol, Yisrael, Amen. Concludes the graveside services, Jack. I did want you to know we'll be reading his name in services both tonight and tomorrow morning at that bell. You can access, if you're in town, you can come to services tonight. Otherwise, you can access the services online. You can find them on Facebook. Jack's name will be read both tonight. Tonight particularly, there's a phrase that's used to greet warriors after the names of those who have had losses in the community. So in the week I read, it was saying, Hamakom Yinatem Etem, the Tov Sha'ar Avedotzi. You should be able to make the journey with families and friends from the losses you live back out into the world. Better off than your dad was in it for 92 years. Making that journey, find comfort from a lot of the weather and know what they're like. Probably by the time you're over sense of who he was and how he was and how you carry all those stories. To say, Hamakom Yinatem Etem, the Tov Sha'ar Avedotzi. That also. Folks, thanks so much for being here today. Safe travels, traveling. Let's just make it sweeter with you.
You tell everybody they're welcome to follow this.
Okay, so Alan is saying that everyone's welcome. Join for a meal at the buildings at Kava Mezza. Say that right? My Hebrew's good, my Italian not so good. Kava Mezza, the address is 3122 Only Sandy Springs Road. That's here in Apple Park. Kava Mezza. You have code cards with the address on it?
Yeah,
Great.
so welcome.
Everyone be well. Take care.
Thank
I just looked at it. So, a few years ago,
It's because you have to be part of your package. But you have to. If you have to. That's what it is.